Welcome to the Pulpit View podcast. My name is Stephen Garrett. With over 20 years of experience in leadership, family, and ministry, I've asked some brothers to come join me and have a conversation of what it takes to bring balance to each. Why don't you join me on this journey? Let's go. Good evening. Welcome. Tonight, we're excited to have you. My name is Stephen K. Garrett. I am, for those who are the first time here, I am a pastor, I'm a leader, I'm a husband. I've had the privilege of being in leadership for over 20 years. I've had the privilege of being an entrepreneur, a speaker, a pastor, but the greatest gift has been a family man. And tonight, in this episode of the Pulpit View, we want to talk about the concept of learning the art of the pivot. Learning the art of the pivot. I think sometimes our biggest struggle in life is that we struggle with the fact that sometimes we can get caught up in life's entanglements and find ourselves ready to throw in the towel because life did not go the way we expected it to go. Plans did not happen the way we thought they would happen. And now we are finding ourselves in a place of wondering, how do we shift what is going on? And so being in leadership, it is something that is not just common. It is something that is expected, that you are going to have to pivot in life, that there's going to be some things that you just expect to shift in certain ways. And so tonight, I want to challenge you as we have this conversation about learning the art of the pivot, of getting outside of yourself and questioning, here it is, what if the pivot was necessary? What if the pivot was necessary? What if, when life threw its worst at you, it was really what was trying to shift you to becoming a better leader, a better spiritual leader, a better father, a better husband, just a better man or woman? What if the pivot was necessary? And so one of the things that I want to highlight tonight that I think is very relevant is that in leadership, we sometimes have a negative view to pivoting, because pivoting sometimes feels like failure. Most people do not change directions unless they recognize that they've been going in the wrong direction, right? Most people do not change strategy unless the strategy they were using was not right. Most people don't change form. I'm in the gym on a regular now, and one of the things that I've learned being in the gym so much is that form is so vital. And every now and then, when I am trying to lift a heavier weight, or I'm trying to bench press a higher number, I will sometimes mess up my form. My hands won't be in the right placement. I remember one particular night we were training. This is early. And so I'm at the bar and I'm lifting, and I got my whole hand around the bar and I'm lifting it in a certain way. And what was shared with me was, Stephen, try using your palm. He said, this little adjustment is going to change everything. And as soon as I made the adjustment, what happened was I was able to lift the weight by far easier. And what I discovered was, once I shifted my tactic, once I shifted my strategy, what was hard at one point became a lot easier. And so one of the things I want to share with you is that sometimes in leadership, as we're peering behind the curtain of what leadership looks like in the family, in the marketplace, in the church house. One of the struggles that many leaders deal with is pivoting. And before you say I'm a great pivoter, or the church is seriously it's the church, I want to tell you that we have a common conversation in pastoral communities of how church people can be tied to traditionalism. And can I tell you, one of the reasons that I believe we have to learn the art of the pivot is because we have sadly placed all of the blame on the church people for why the church hasn't pivoted. And some of it comes from us. Let me share with you. I remember the first time that I didn't preach in a suit. I felt off. And I know that sounds very simple and just like you couldn't preach without a suit on. The first time I preached in a robe, I felt off. But after I was in the environment that required a robe, or when I was in the environment that required me to dress down, it would not have been well received if I was not dressed for the environment. So I had to shift what I had on, my attire. And I think sometimes we wear our traditionalism and the way that we're used to doing things, that we've gotten to a place where, can I be honest with you, we've gotten to a place where sometimes our struggle is we're unwilling to change our tactic for the moment. I remember Pastor Mark Lee said something that blessed me. He said, the message should never change, but the method must be fluid. You know, one of our favorite songs in the Black Baptist Church is "To serve this present age, my calling to fulfill." I remember when I went to the first church that I saw them doing praise dancing in the church. Listen, I loved it. But I remember sitting next to this young lady, this older lady in this church where I am visiting, and they're doing praise dancing, and she just, I don't know why they got to do all that. I don't know why they got to do the young ladies and the men that are in there, because the men are doing another level. It's like miming. They're doing miming, and they got praise dance going on. And what was happening was this older lady, she had an issue with it, and she's complaining about it the whole time. And so the pastor said something when he got up that blessed me. He said, some of you don't understand why this is going on. He said, but our children could be in the streets, but they're in the church, and they enjoy being in the church. He said, maybe if we look at the benefit, we'll stop complaining about the change. And so tonight, I want to dive in tonight for a quick moment, because we go through the Bible and we see all of these places where pivots had to happen. Paul wanted to go in one direction, and in Acts chapter 16, the Bible says that the Spirit redirected him to another place that he desired. What happens when you have your plans in place? You have everything set on how you want things to go, and it is necessary for you to pivot. It is necessary for the Lord has told you it is time for you to go in a different direction. What happens when your plans are not God's plans? What happens when you knew that you were on the next level You're on your way to the next level, the next appointment, and God shifts it, and you're in the same place 20 years from now. I remember a pastor shared with me one time. He said, man, I never thought I would stay here. This is what he shared with me. He had been there for 35 years by that time. He said, when I first came, I knew this was a stepping stone in my walk with God. He said, I just knew it in my heart of hearts. He said, and I remember when I was up for another church in another city, he said, and I'm talking about, he said, Reverend, this church had multiple services, and this is in the 90s. He said multiple services in the 90s. He said they were one of the well-known churches of their day. He said, and I remember going there, and I've been talking to the Lord, and he said, and even in my conversation with the Lord, I was thanking the Lord for what he was doing. And while I was praising God for what he was doing, he said, I got there that day, and they shared something with me that in that moment I heard the Lord's voice and said to me, that it's not for you to be here. Go back home. He said, I preached. He said, the Lord had brought people to Christ that day. I got back home. I wrote them a letter and told them that I was sorry I would have to decline the offer because the Lord has decided to keep me here. He said, and now being here 35 years, he said, I can share that it was the best decision the Lord that was ever made. And I want to share with you that sometimes our plans, we've heard the saying that man plans, God changes them, right? You've heard it. You've heard that man's way is right in his own eye. You have made plans, and now God is causing you to pivot. Now, here's the problem when you've made plans and God has caused you to pivot. I want to share this with you. Here's the first thing. The first thing is you got to deal with the mourning process. You have to deal with the mourning process. Most of us, when we realize that the plans that we have set in place are not the plans that God has for us anymore, we go through a bereavement process because life is shifting in a way that we never thought it would. I remember when the Lord told me that I would not finish a goal of mine. I'm telling you, and when I say it was the Lord, it was the Lord. I've been praying. God had helped me to allowed me to help others achieve a goal in this particular area that I was asking God for. I've been praying, and I've been talking to the Lord, and so an opportunity had presented itself, and I knew God was answering my prayer. And as I was going into that opportunity, the Lord said, this is not for you. I have something greater. I remember, I'm talking about, as I'm talking to you all, I can feel that in my spirit that the Lord is telling me, this is not for me. I have something greater for you. And I sat there on the steps after this meeting with tears running down my eye. A young 20-something-year-old, and tears are running down my eye because I can't believe that I have everything I need to accomplish the goal. Everything is there, but they have told me no. I've knocked on literally every single door, and they said, this is not the season. And so as I'm there with tears in my eyes, I'm talking to the Lord, and I'm praying, and I'm asking God. He shows me the next steps, and every door opens that he shows me. Every door opens almost without struggle. Every door opens that he shows me. And I want to tell you why. I had to grieve it, and it was something that even while I was progressing, I was still having a pity party. Woo! I want to share something with you. You can see the blessings of the Lord and still feel burdened by your past. And one of the struggles when we are learning to pivot is not allowing your past failures, your past pivots, your past struggles to impact your current successes. But I'm telling you, after over 20 years of ministry, over 20 years of leadership and entrepreneurship, I am telling you, there have been seasons of my life that here it is, I have allowed my past failures to impact and to negatively influence my current season. And it wasn't until I allowed that to shift and I started to become more fluid. I told you all, I go to therapy. Some of my therapists said to me one day, they said, Stephen, I admire you so much because you have the strength of a rock, but that has a limit. I want to challenge you to have more of the strength of a river. And I said, what do you mean? She said, a boulder is strong. It is solid. For many, it's unmovable. But here it is. When seasons change, it doesn't change with the season. And sometimes it can cause it damage. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, have you ever noticed that there's cracks in the ground? She said, because that ground is solid. And when the world is moving, those cracks disrupt it and break it. She said, so sometimes you're so solid, she said, that when disruption happens, it causes you not to shift with those disruptions. I want to share with you something she said. She said, but a river has the ability to corrode the boulder, but it shifts with the season. She said, it is so strong that it can barrel through a city. She said, but it's so pliable that when something tries to block it, it knows how to go around it. I want to tell you what the true art of the pivot is. The true art of the pivot is recognizing that it's not failure, it's repositioning. It's repositioning. It is recognizing that there are some places that you have been told is not the season for you. But you've also been challenged to find ways around it. Now, here it is. What I discovered when I heard the not yet was delay is not denial. But if I had achieved what I wanted when I wanted it, I wouldn't be where I am today, where I need to be. And so here it is. You look at people like Abraham. Abraham, we discover, may have mastered the art of the pivot. Abraham is 75 when he's told to leave his father's land and go to a place that he's shown. He leaves without a destination in tow. And the Bible says, to the point that when he is finally there, he doesn't even know he's there until he's there. And so here it is. Then he is given a promise through his son. And after the promise is given, he is told to sacrifice it. Abraham always moved with the will of God. So the first thing is, if you're going to learn the art of the pivot, you're going to have to learn how to grieve properly. Because pivoting means that something you are changing direction, courses, or strategy. Here it is. And that might be hard, and it's okay to grieve, but you cannot allow your past grief to impact your present praise. So if we're going to pivot, you're going to have to learn how to move with God. You're going to have to learn how to move with God. One of um one of my, I won't say favorite texts, but I love the conversation between John Mark and Paul. Now, for those that don't know the story of John Mark and Paul, John Mark decides that he's not going to go with Paul on the journey. And Paul, in that moment, starts to negatively talk about John Mark. Well, after that, here's what happens. Later on, Paul is talking to the brethren, and he says, praise God for John Mark, because he didn't go this direction and the gospel spread. You cannot let the weight of others' opinions stop you from pivoting. I'll say that again. You cannot let the weight, the influence of others' opinions stop you from pivoting. When you learn how to move with God's will, you no longer care about the opinions of those who don't understand the goal. I'll say that again. I did not say they will not impact you. But when I say you do not care, you understand that God's purpose is going to reveal itself and show itself in due season. And the truth of the matter is that's difficult. That is difficult because the crowd is sometimes louder than the voice of God. Not more powerful, but louder. You've heard that he speaks in a still small voice. Sometimes you got to get quiet and away from the crowd to hear God. But that crowd is saying, crucify him. That crowd is saying, bring yourself down. That crowd is saying, Hosanna at one point and crucify him at another point. But can you be quiet enough to hear God and be dedicated and disciplined enough to pivot when God says pivot? Listen, if you're in a season of pivoting, if you're in a season of, listen, I'm shifting, and some folk don't understand the shift that that's happening right now, I just need you to put in there pivot. Put in the comments pivot. If you know that there are something, we had to pivot. We had to pivot in the pandemic. I remember one pastor came to me, a retired pastor, and he tried to sly talk and say, I just don't believe preachers that aren't having in-person service have faith. If you're not having in-person service, then do you really believe in God? And I said, well, God gave us wisdom. And he was like, well, Reverend, I just believe this. I said, you have every right to believe what you believe. I said, but I care so much about these senior saints. We're going to figure out ways that they can worship in the safety of their homes, and we can still reach them. And at the same time, I can be on task. So every single Sunday, I would drive to church and be present at BMBC in Phoenix City from Montgomery without hesitation to make sure that I was there. But here it is. We had to pivot. By the grace of God, we had just set up, just in January, we had just set up our Givelify account. And folk were why we need Givelify, why we need electronic giving, They're gonna do this, they're gonna do this. But here it is. And it didn't show up. It did not prove itself to have some value until just a couple of years after. But if I listen to all of the naysayers, if I was so concerned about everyone that said it wasn't going to work, then what would have happened is we wouldn't have been prepared. That was a season that we set up our deacons list, and we had deacons assigned to members. That was the time that we did most of our virtual Bible studies. Why? Because when we were doing it doing the we just trusted people were going to be there. The Pulpit View was born during that time because I recognized that the Lord was saying something different for me. And that might not be what he said for you. I'm not telling you that if the Lord told you to stay in the church, that the Lord didn't say it. I'm telling you what the Lord told me in that season was what the Lord told me, and I had to be obedient. But the problem that we have sometimes is that we're very, very connected to people's opinions and not God's opinion. Do you hear me? We're very connected to people's opinion and not God's opinion. And the question is, can you be committed to God's opinion, God's direction, and drown out the noise of those who are naysayers? Who are naysayers? So here it is. First thing is, you have to learn how to grieve your past without allowing it to impact your present praise. Second, you have to drown out the noise and move with the will of God. Third and last, hear me, you have to go all in. You cannot be anchored to the ways you used to do things. And I'm helping myself as I'm saying this. You cannot be anchored in the way you used to do things and expect new outcomes. Let me share with you. I was in the barbershop for over 20 years. I have both of my feet were already somewhat flat before I start cutting hair, but my arch has completely collapsed, right? And I remember when I started this workout journey, because I love to run. I remember when I started this workout journey, I'm like, I'm getting back into running. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I'm sure I can get back into running at some point. But here it is. Went to the doctor. The doctor said, Stephen, you got to find some alternatives. Got to find some alternatives. There's riding a bike. There's elliptical. He said there's a treadmill. He said, but running is not going to do you good because the fact that your arch collapsed, your ankles aren't doing what they need to do. He said, so you need to shift some of the things you're doing. Can I tell you something? For the first year, y'all, I would consistently, I do what he said, but every now and then I'm like, I feel good today. I'm going to take a run. Sure enough, the run would go good. Then I'd be like, oh, I can get back into another run. Who cares what the doctor says? I'm going to do my own thing. And one day I'm running and I hear a pop. Boy, I didn't tear nothing, but I stretched it real good, right? And I'm down. And so I cannot work out. I cannot work out because I literally cannot stand on my foot for at least 3 weeks. Cannot stand on my foot. Can't walk. I got to limp everywhere I go. I got to wear a brace everywhere I go. And so my trainer was like, we don't want to damage it anymore. Take a rest and we'll get back in. And so here it is, y'all. I got better. I said, well, this time I'm going to get arch support and I'll try to run with some arch support because I was just running regular shoes. I'm hard-headed. As hard-headed as they can come, right? Again, twisted my ankle. Didn't pop this time. Didn't do this. I just twisted my ankle. I'm down for a week this time. The last time I went to the doctor, I said, you know what? I'm going to do exactly what the doctor said. So I stopped. And I've been on a consistent journey because I pivoted and I stopped trying to be the old version of myself and embrace the new version of myself and what the new version can do. Sometimes the problem that we have is when God tells us what to do, we're still trying to dibble and dabble in the way we used to do things. We're still trying to take in some of those old things that we used to do. Bible says, behold, the old man has passed away. Behold, I've created in you a new creation. The reality is sometimes we are too stuck trying to do old things, old ways, and we're expecting new results. And I'm here to tell you, the only way you're going to see great results is when you buy in fully. And that takes getting over a level of fear. That takes getting over a level of fear. And I'm sharing with you all. I've been there, and there are days I'm still there. I've been out of the shop now for 3 years. 3 years that I have not been in a barbershop as an owner, a customer, or a barber. 3 years. Not one of them, right? Now, I still cut hair on the sides for my own skill set because I want to train all my kids. And they won't let no one else cut their hair. But I hadn't been in a barbershop. Can I tell you, there have been at least 100 times I wanted to reopen a barbershop. And I've had folk offer to help me open it. Here's the reason why. Because whenever money gets a little tight, I'm like, ooh, I got some skills that I know how to go and generate something I need to generate. But I'm also asking God to broaden my territory, to expand my reach, to utilize some gifts that I allowed to stay dormant for years. So here's what I had to recognize. Either I was going to embrace the pivot fully, or I was going to halftime the pivot. And I want to share with you that embracing the gift that God has given you, embracing the call that God has put on your life, embracing the shift that God is making on your life is a complete surrender and not a partial surrender. And that is difficult. I'm telling you, I'm not saying that you need to change it tomorrow. I'm not telling you that it's not going to be hard. I'm telling you that if you've been in a leadership position, taking on and standing 10 toes down on that thing is difficult. It's difficult. Can I tell you why it's difficult? It's difficult because first, fear has a way of whispering in your ear. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes fear is just quiet and consistent. Fear is constantly reminding you that bills are due. Fear is constantly showing up in new situations saying you've never been in that place before. Fear is telling you that the members are going to revolt. Fear is telling you that they're going to stop giving like they need to. Fear is telling you that if you step away from that thing, that you will not have enough. Fear can be quiet and consistent just as much as it can be loud and boisterous. And I want you to understand that if you're going to shift, if you're going to pivot, if you're going to really take reins on it, it's going to require you, hear me, to embrace it fully. And that's difficult. That is difficult. That's not easy, but it's possible. Not only is one of the reasons that it's hard to learn the art of the pivot is because of fear. It's hard to learn the art of the pivot because of imposter syndrome. You can't pivot because you don't think you belong. You don't think you have what it takes to pivot. You don't think you're enough to pivot. You are like Abraham asking, but how can this be? Well, like Sarah, how can this be? Sarah posed a question, I'm old. How can this be? How can this be? You have an issue because you feel somebody else could do the job better than you. Think about it. Sarah offered her maiden because she felt she was capable of doing something that God said it was for her to do. I'll say that again because you may have missed it. Sarah offered her handmaiden because she felt it was easier for her to do it, or she was more capable of doing it than she was. And isn't that something for somebody to hear what God said and at the same time just say, no, this person's better at it, this person's more equipped? It is lit. Moses says, God, find somebody else. I'm not right for the task. Sometimes the reason you can't embrace it is because you have imposter syndrome and you don't feel like you are fit for the task. But if you're going to pivot, you're going to have to believe not in yourself, but in what God said about you. Because sometimes, can I be honest with you? Can we be real for a moment? Sometimes it is hard to know you, believe in you, because you know you. And you know you got some fickle ways. Peter knew him, and that's why it was hard for Peter to believe in himself. But I don't trust in who I know my history is. I trust in what God says I am. And part of pivoting is moving outside of what your rap sheet says and holding on to what God's record says. That he takes the worst and makes the best. So part of our problem is failure. It's fear, imposter syndrome, and the last thing is this: impatience. Impatience. Because when we pivot, we want it to happen right now, and we don't want to go through the process. Abraham had 25 years of waiting before the Lord secured the promise. For the Lord secured the promise for him. The Lord had already settled that the promise was coming, but before Abraham was able to hold it. And sometimes the reason that we want to turn back is because we're impatient with God. And because we feel like God is constrained to the time frame that we have. That what we feel like is that if it doesn't happen within this season of our life, it's not going to happen. Something I discovered the other day here, the largest number of billionaires and millionaires happened in their 40s. Stop believing the hype that's on Facebook, Instagram, and all of these social medias that show these 20-year-olds traveling the world and doing all this stuff, and you think that they're just rich and you're behind. You're not behind. You're right on time. You're right where you're supposed to be. Stop believing the hype as a leader that all these churches are packed every Sunday. God knows. Listen, I love watching Pastor Cosby. I love watching Pastor Anderson. I love watching some of these great pastors. But here it is. Not all the churches look like that. Most of them don't. Most of them are 50 members strong. Some are smaller. And the pastors are serving well. And they're educated. It's not a lack in who the pastor is. It's that God has called them for that season. But patience says that I don't have to be at the final destination yet for God. And what if that is the final destination? What if God only calls you to pastor that beautiful small church in that town? But he teaches you and he shows you how to love them like no one else and they are impactful in the community. Patience is key if you're going to learn the art of the pivot. Gonna share with you this, and then we're done because I gotta eat. And I'm eating late tonight, so I'm eating a light meal, but I'm eating late tonight. So here it is. Yes, you have to be willing if you're going to learn the art of the pivot. You're going to have to be willing to flow with God's will. You got to be willing to not hear the noise of the people. You have to be willing to embrace it. I mean, to grab a hold of it. But can I share with you, if you are willing to build this relationship with the Lord to a point where fear no longer holds you back, imposter syndrome doesn't make you feel invalid. And here it is. Patience is at your forefront. You are going to see a shift happen in your life. You're going to see a shift happening in your life. And I want to challenge you tonight because as we're going into Easter, as we're going into the spring season, I just believe that this is a chance for you to see some of the best work that God wants to do in your life this year. Some of it, but it's going to require you to give up that thing that you're afraid of, to stop feeling like you don't belong in the place that God has placed you in, that you're a guest in your calling. Ooh, that's good. Stop feeling like you're a guest in your calling. You were called for that purpose. You were called for that place. And then be patient enough to allow God to do his perfect work. It says that our trial worketh our patience, endurance, so we can see the completion. I'm paraphrasing, the completion of God's perfect will. So here's what I want to share with you. Maybe this is one of your struggles. You've been struggling in pivoting. I want you to reach out to me. I want you to reach out. If you have been struggling in pivoting in your ministry, in your family, because right now your family is not in the place that you want it to be, and there's some shifts that needs to happen for you to get back on track. Can't do the same things the way you used to do. I told somebody growing up in my family, my mother did all the cooking. I love cooking more than my wife, so we balance out cooking very well. I work from home now, so I help do cleaning. Why? Because I'm at home more than I used to be, and I don't like a dirty house either. So here it is. She's busy. I'm busy. We had to shift and pivot the way we did things. We have older kids, so we put them to work. We have more responsibilities. There are things we have to pivot. And the problem that you might be having is you're trying to do old things for a new season of your life. And I want to challenge you to reach out, and I want to connect with you, because my passion comes from the fact that I remember when I experienced burned out. I remember when I was ready to throw in the towel. I remember hearing so many of those pastors that were throwing in the towel, leaving churches, stepping away from their families, finding themselves giving up on life. And that breaks my heart. And I believe that you do not have to lose family to love God's people. I believe in my heart of heart that you can be a dynamic pastor and an awesome husband. I believe you do not have to sacrifice your children for the youth of the church. I believe you have the ability to see a shift in your life and to be able to fully enjoy what you do again. I believe you can fall back in love with leadership. I know what it feels like to get the phone call and see them calling and want to put the phone back down. I know what it feels like to make up excuses of why you can't make it to that meeting, why you can't be there, why here it is, we got to cancel Bible study tonight. I know what it feels like to feel like you wish you had somebody on the other end that could preach for you in the morning because you just don't have it in you today. I know what it feels like to sometimes sit in the restroom and just sit with your thoughts. Know what it feels like to get home from work all day after working all day and just sit in the car, not because you got an issue with your family, but you're trying to reset so you can be the type of person you need to be, the type of man you need to be, so they don't feel like you're taking something from them, but you're wondering who's going to pour back into you. And so what I want to do, I want to connect with you. We're working on something right now. And in the future, we're going to have some great, exciting news coming of some things we have coming in the woodworks. But before that happens, I want you to connect with me, because I believe as a man of God, as a man, as a husband, as a pastor, God has equipped you and given you, here's the word, the capacity to pivot. He's giving you the capacity to pivot. But it starts with you reaching out and talking to someone and letting them know that I need to pivot. So connect with me through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Message me, and I would love for us to sit down and go through and develop strategies for your future. But for those that are watching us and they love what we do, we have these deep conversations. Here's what I'm asking you to do. We are consistently reminding you, we are building our YouTube page because we know Facebook does not keep the videos on for more than 30 days. And so what I'm asking you to do is, if you have not liked, subscribed, or followed us on YouTube yet, please go over to Stephen K. Garrett. Stephen Garrett. Type in Pulpit View on your YouTube. It will come to one of our videos, and we would love it if you would do us the honor of following us. We respect your time. We know that your like, your follow, and your subscribe is something that you hold dear, and we would be grateful if you would share it with us. Have a phenomenal night. Know that I'm praying for you. Brothers and sisters that are in the gospel, I want you to preach well on Sunday. Know that you have somebody praying on this side, that God would speak well through you and that he would use you in a powerful way. Have a phenomenal night and have an incredible week. Remember that you can pivot.